And I guess, Kathy, I might as well ask you, since I asked Julie and Barbara, anything, have you practiced anything from earlier in the week or noticed anything? Yeah. And
yeah, I've been doing the heart math every day and the healing codes. I did this morning before I even got up out of bed, and it was a really nice way to start the day. And I just, it feels better. So I think I'm going to do it that way, first thing in the morning and then last thing at night, and then try and throw it in the middle of the day somewhere.
Wonderful. That's a great plan. Yeah, you just really, especially when you're still kind of sleepy or you're drifting off into sleep, because that's when your brain waves are the most susceptible to changes. So, in your body and then your nervous system and your subconscious, when you're sort of just waking up and you haven't even gotten out of bed, you're still a little groggy, or as you drift off to sleep, are both perfect times for a lot of different tools, but certainly for the healing code. So great. Okay. Okay. So today I just wanted to really pull it all together, do a little recap of each of the pieces, and then just, give you an overview so that if you feel like this makes sense for me and I'd like to keep doing some work together, I'm going to give you options on how to do that. Okay. So the pieces that we did look at this week are physiology, right? The physiology of heart math, the physiology of the nervous system. And that's one tool and one part of heart math's whole process to help with that part. And so whether it's heart math or any breathing, there's a lot of different breathing techniques that you can find online, and just find one that works for you. But breathing, just think about every emotion that we have changes our breathing pattern, right? When we're angry, our breathing gets different. When we're laughing really hard, our breathing changes. When we're crying, our breathing changes. So the breath gets changed with every emotion. And the flip side is true. You can actually change your emotions and your nervous system by changing your breath. So it's a very basic and critical, easy, but huge part of what you can do for yourself. So that was like a physiology piece on Monday. And then Tuesday, we talked about the spirituality part of it and bringing your spirit and your soul back into the picture. What I think has happened in our culture, in our modern life, in our education system, we've separated out our medical system totally, right? You have your physical body and then your spirit is something else. Somebody else handles that. Go talk to your priest, right? So the emotions and the spirit and the body are really all working together. And so the goal I love in healing codes, because Julie and I were kind of talking at the beginning, that it brings the physiology of getting calm in with your spirituality and getting yourself reconnected back to the power of using your intention and those truth statements that can resonate in your body, along with asking God. And I think it's different than prayer. I mean, there's that prayer that you start with, but I feel, for me anyway, it's different than just praying, because, or at least the way I learned how to pray, there was a separateness. Like it was always God was there and I'm here and I'm going to ask God and I'm going to hope for the best or something, like hope I'm worthy of him answering. And for me, the experience was more of getting myself back into the place where God and I are one. God's love is in me all the time. And I am part, sort of like, a drop of water is part of the ocean, and the ocean is in every drop of water. You're not going to separate out the two. So that's how it occurs for me. And I want to share two things about the power of that connection with you. I probably should have done it on the day of the class, but it just occurred to me actually 2 times in my life that I just was able to really experience the impact of God in my life. And both of them had to do with my daughter. But the first one was, I think she was maybe 9 months old. And to give you this, you obviously know that she had a lot of health issues and she passed away, but the kind of a timeline was the night she was born, she was given last rites and rushed for open heart surgery. We live in New Jersey. They transported her, medical transport, at like 3 o'clock in the morning to New York Presbyterian Children's Hospital. And she had open heart surgery, her first, in 12 hours old. And then from there, just a lot of complications. And she had a second open heart surgery. She had a stroke after that first one. So she had a stroke. They had to put a shunt in her head because of the damage from the stroke. And then her kidneys did not receive enough oxygen from that post-surgery, and they got damaged. And she was the youngest kidney transplant that New York Presbyterian had ever done. She was not yet 2 years old when she had her kidney transplant. And then she needed a second open heart surgery. And then she got cancer when she was 8 years old. And that was from the immunosuppression of the transplant drugs, suppressed her immune system. She got Epstein-Barr virus in a blood transfusion that she needed. And then the Epstein-Barr virus is a very opportunistic virus. And when your immune system is suppressed, so people, the autoimmune people that I work with, a lot of us have Epstein-Barr. And when you have an immune system that's not working well, it enjoys that. It can really cause problems. And in transplant patients, it can become cancer. It becomes lymphoma, actually. It proliferates like chickenpox can become shingles, right? It proliferates into, it's the chickenpox virus, but it becomes shingles. So that's what happened to her. And then we got through that 2 years of chemotherapy and immunotherapy, and then her kidney was failing. And we were trying to get a second transplant. It would have been my kidney because I was a match. It just was too big when she was a baby, and she passed. She didn't make it to get to the transplant. So in that timeline, she was about 9 months old, had come home for the first time after being born. She was in the hospital for 6 months before she came home. So she was about 9 months old. And they saw that the kidneys had been damaged, and they told me she was probably going to need a kidney transplant. And I was so distraught. Like, she had already been, a baby, been cut here to here from the open heart surgery. She had a shunt put in. At this point, she'd had a feeding tube put in because she never was able to learn how to eat with her mouth. And I could not imagine now they were going to transplant this baby's, give her a transplant. And I was home in the house by myself. And we had a lot of help. My son was 2. Somebody had him somewhere, but we had a lot of help, and people were dropping off food. Like my church was dropping off food. And I was up in her room, which is just at the top of the stairs, and sobbing from my soul of fear. Really, it was fear. Like, please, I don't want her to have this transplant. And I heard this voice. And when you hear something in your head, but it's your voice because it's your voice, like your thoughts. It was a man's voice. It was not my voice, but it was a man's voice. Just, it'll be okay. That's what I heard. It'll be okay. And I was like, oh God, somebody's in the house. Like, we were having some work done so that the house was, it doesn't matter. But I thought it was one of the men, or maybe somebody was dropping off food from church or whatever. So I go to the top of the stairs and I'm yelling, hello, hello. Nobody was in the house. And within like 10 seconds of that, like me stopping myself and yelling hello, and I realized nobody was in the house, this incredible feeling of calm came over my body. Like that, the fear that was physical for me just dissipated. And I thought, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And at that point, like, we were told, every surgery was like, she's not going to make it, right? So we were never expecting a year, let alone 15 years. But I thought it'll be okay. And I didn't know, did that mean she's not going to have the transplant? Because that's what I was upset about. And it didn't mean that. She did get a transplant probably 10 months later. But the feeling of calm. And I just know that that was God's voice. It just was. It was like inside my head. It was sure. It was strong. It was loud. And my fear went away. So that was the first time. And then the second time, she was not yet 3. It was like January, and she turned 3 in May. And she had gotten RSV, which is a virus, a respiratory virus. Have you ever heard of it?
Mm-hmm.
So RSV, it's a respiratory something virus. And for kids who have heart issues, and that was really her only issue at birth, was this heart anomaly that required open heart surgery, but everything else just went south from there. But when kids with heart and lung issues, it's very, very bad, it can be deadly. And she got RSV, and she was put on a ventilator, and the inflammation in her lungs was so severe. They had the ventilator on as high as they could. It was on 100% oxygen. So when you're put on a ventilator, there's like when we're breathing in air right now, it's, I think 26% of the air is oxygen. So pure oxygen like that going into your lung tissue is very damaging. That's why oxidative stress is a problem in your body. That's free radicals causing oxidative stress. Oxygen can be damaging. It's when you cut an apple and you put an apple out on the counter, it turns brown. That's oxidation. So oxygen, even though we need it, can be damaging. So the ventilator was on 100% oxygen. The pressure to keep her ventilated was so high that it was blowing holes in her lungs because her lungs were so inflamed from this virus. So she had 5 holes in her lungs, 5 chest tubes coming out. And even with that, her lips and tongue were black, and her body was filling up like a Michelin girl with air because the air was leaking out of her lungs where those holes were. And she was satting, if you know what that means, the oxygen sat like on the monitors in the 70s, which is very bad. So there was nowhere else for them to go. They're at 100% oxygen. They can't turn the pressure up any higher because it's blowing holes in her lungs, and her saturations were at in the 70s. And she'd had the transplant the previous March. So this is now January. And the head of the NICU, I'm sorry, not the NICU, the critical care, said to me, we need to have a conversation when enough is enough. This was on a Friday. And he said, this child is one of the sickest I've ever taken care of, and I don't think she can go much further. And I said, you've got to wait till my husband's available to come in. So Monday comes, new attending guy. So they switch teams, right? So it's a new guy. And it was a guy that we knew because she'd been living there since she was born practically. So the 2 of us go in, and we're going to have a meeting with him. And I said to him, Dr. Harnett, George Harnett, I love him to this day. And I said, please don't take Charlotte off the ventilator today because it's my niece's birthday. And I don't want, and so my niece was turning 1. It was her first birthday. Charlotte was 2. And I said, I don't want my family to forever be, Zoe's birthday to be marred by Charlotte being taken off the ventilator on her birthday. Like, you just please let it. And he looked at me and he said, I have no intention of doing that. And my husband and I were like, you know, we were fully expecting that from the guy on Friday. And he said, Charlotte always surprises us. I don't put anything past her. She'll tell us when she's ready. So I went into her room. Mike went to work. And that afternoon, I prayed like I never prayed before. Like I used to feel like I didn't know how to pray. Like I'd be like, I don't know, God, please, whatever. I went down to the bookstore and they had these little like prayer, you know, like these little books, and I just started reading them. And I looked at the monitor and I put the books down and I said, God, there is nobody else to make a difference here but you. You're it. I'm just asking you. If it's her time, let me know so I'm ready. And if it's not, please step in and help them, because there is nothing any of these doctors can do. This machine is maxed out. And I'm not kidding you. In 15 minutes, the numbers started to move. So she was at like 76, 77 sats. All of a sudden it said for 11 weeks. She had been on that ventilator for 11 weeks. So anyway, yeah, we went in October. So I call the nurse in and I'm like, her sats are going up. The nurse, we stand there and watch, and the numbers 79, 80, 80, 80, 79, 81, 81, 82, within 15 minutes of that prayer. She calls the attending and she brings him over and she's like, Charlotte's numbers are moving. And he looks at me and he goes, I told you she always surprises us. She did. She got up into the 90s by that night after 11 weeks. It was one heartfelt prayer from my soul that did that. So those are the two times in her life that I really got present to the power of God and believing in what that can do. I mean, I actually have plenty of other times because she did live another 15 years through several more of those kinds of situations. But I'm sharing it with you because we just don't know what's available and what's possible. And when we're stuck in the fear of it and we're stuck in what we already think we know and what we're doing, we're not opening up everything else. So I had no intention of sharing those stories with you today when we got on the call, except that I just thought we started talking about prayer, and those were my two big stories that I sometimes share with people. So that was Tuesday's call about, and the last piece of that is, I was just sort of someone who went, as I was raised as a Christian as a little girl, I went to Sunday school, but it was kind of like, there's God and there's me. And I don't know. I will say that Mike, I think his culture, the Black culture, has their feet very grounded in faith, like very, very, he has a very strong faith and had gone to school to be a minister. And so there were many times when I was distraught and he would say, Linda, that's what the doctors say. It doesn't mean that's what God says.
That's right.
He'd say that over and over.
That's right.
So, and I learned to trust that. That was not a trust, like a knowing that I had before that. And that's part of like what I do, why I do what I do now. Cause I'm like, okay, Char, like here she is. I have like a million pictures. This is her room. Actually, I moved my office into, but that's her. So I'm like, okay, Char, why did we go through that? What were those 15 years about? What am I supposed to do with it? So that's why I pull that into the work that I think people need to do to get themselves well. Yesterday was a conversation. Sorry, let me just close the door. Hush, you guys, hush. Isn't it amazing how just the word hush works for them? I don't know how they learned it, but I say hush and they stop. Yesterday was a conversation around ontology, ONTOLOGY. Well, they stopped for a minute. Anyway, ontology is the study of what it is to be a human being. So we talked about physiology. We talked about spirituality. Yesterday was ontology, the study of what it is to be a human being. You could look it up and make it up. And I've taken courses on that to use those tools that we just sort of peeked into yesterday. But there's certain things that go into being a human being, certain ways of being that are just inherent, like having the ability with our thinking brain to think about that cheetah, like the antelope doesn't think about it. They just go back to not being stressed. And we're like, oh my God, Why was he doing that? You know, the story, that's an ontological characteristic of being a human being, is that we automatically take everything that happens and put a story to it and make it mean something. And we don't even know if the meaning is true or not, but then it colors our relationships with ourselves and with others and how we go through life. So that's the ontology piece. And then the last way that I work with people, like kind of all together, as we pull it all together, is really from my health background as a health coach, which is, you know, how are you doing with your food? What's going on with your food and your gut? I don't do the extensive gut work that I was doing when I was just working with autoimmunity. I can, but I really love this better. Like poop tests don't make me cry, but this work gets me present to the beauty and the gift that my life has been. And that's where I want to spend my time. So, but I do also recognize that people need help with their food. And when we were going to the hospital all the time, I lived on coffee and the vending machine, like even as a health person, which was contributed to why I had, you know, more things go wrong before I got better, because I didn't care. When you're overstressed and you don't feel well, you know, a lot of times that's what goes out the window. So I wanted to make sure that people had access, at least while we were working together, to a food plan that they didn't have to think about. So that's part of the program. If somebody, you know, really has gut issues or autoimmunity, I'll give them the food plan that I was using when I was doing more of that kind of work. If somebody else doesn't have that and they just, you know, would like to bring down inflammation and improve their metabolism and eat well, what's included is a 12-week food plan that will get that job done. But it's not like the gut cleansing and stuff that I do when somebody, and actually a lot of times people are working with a practitioner on that. They're not working with anybody like on this stuff. So they just keep doing that with their practitioner. And then, but I'll include that other 12-week plan that's, you know, like I said, low inflammatory, improves your metabolism. People usually feel better, but it's not an autoimmune plan. If someone needs that, we do that instead, or in addition to, I usually just throw it in. So those are the components of the 10-week plan program that I'm starting next week. Before we go into any more of that, do you have any questions on that? Like what is that? What does it entail that you'd like to ask?
Yes, I'm not so very well, but I've never weighed more than about 107, even at my highest. And now I'm down to 90, about 95, 96, because I'm so nauseous and just can't eat. And I did go to a functional doctor, and she first put me on a gluten-free diet. Then we did do the blood testing and the stool and the urine and all that. And one thing I got from her explanation was that I was low on serotonin. But she did take me off the gluten. She had put me on a gluten-free diet. I kept losing weight even more. And then after she took me off of that, things improved a bit, actually. But I just wonder sometimes, you know, I live in a very rural area, and it's not really easy to find gluten-free foods. Was it more important to try to eat? I still try to eat as gluten-free as I can, but I don't stick to it because I'm losing weight and I just can't afford it. I feel that that's part of my problem is I'm losing so much strength and I'm so fatigued I can't even hardly walk. Sometimes I can hardly breathe and talk. And I don't know if I don't know what it's from.
Okay. So to answer your question about gluten, here's what I've learned in my training about gluten. In this country, gluten really is a problem, I would say, for everybody. And here's the two reasons why. Number one, it's now a hybrid plant. It's not really the wheat plant that our body recognizes from hundreds of years or however long wheat's been grown. In the early 80s, somebody actually got the Nobel Peace Prize for developing a hybridized wheat plant, which is more resistant to disease and grows faster and all this stuff. And that's really all the wheat that's grown in this country, number one. And it's just not the same, so our bodies don't recognize it. Is that a problem for everyone? I think it's a problem for everyone, but plenty of people are healthy enough to handle it.
And I mean, you know, up until I tried to taper this medication. And then the functional doctor says she believes that the trying to taper that medication caused this, you know, effect rolling, you know, just kept rolling.
Yes. So the other thing that I think about gluten is that our country also heavily sprays our crops, especially wheat crops, with glyphosate. And glyphosate is Roundup, and it's sprayed everywhere. I mean, it's on our crops, but you know, in your town, the town landscapers and parks and the baseball fields, it's all sprayed with glyphosate. And glyphosate was used after, I think, the Vietnam War as part of, they realized in the war it was part of, I think, Agent Orange or some other organic chemical substances they were using, and they saw how it worked. It was the Vietnam War, and because they were dropping it to clear the forests in Vietnam so they could actually, the soldiers could see better. It was killing everything. So they were like, oh, well, that really worked well. After that, they came back and they were putting it in the sewer systems because sewer systems were getting clogged with, you know, algae and stuff would grow. So they would put it in there and it would kill everything. And so then somebody said, well, this is awesome because why don't we just use it on our crops to kill all the, you know, it's a great pesticide, but it's actually like an antibiotic, like it kills everything. And the wheat plant, part of how they genetically engineered it was to be able to withstand glyphosate. So it's called Roundup Ready, meaning it won't get killed, but they can use it so that any pests and stuff will be killed and the plant will survive. So the glyphosate is very damaging when you look at the timeline of how it got developed and what they saw it was doing. And now it's being sprayed all over our environment and it's building up in our bodies. So, so those are the two reasons why I think gluten is a big problem, because you're going to keep getting doses of glyphosate and you're getting a GMO'd product. In terms of your weight, I would, you know, I would try to get weight on in other ways than adding gluten back in. Even if it was a different grain, even if you felt like you needed like the carbohydrate, like you don't want to be so carb free, there's other carbs beside, you know, black rice from Asia. I only buy rice from Asia. I don't buy rice from the United States. So that's my thought on gluten and glyphosate. And I think clearing the body. So what I was doing, it's not what this program is about, but what I was doing and is clearing the body one step at a time, getting elimination, meaning your poop going, getting your liver and your drainage pathways, moving things out. You need good binders to get that glyphosate out. In fact, there were studies done, so the glyphosate has become very widely used since, I guess, the mid 80s. And they did some studies even on young athletes, like high school students who were playing soccer on these fields that have been sprayed. And the incidence compared to prior to the 80s, still the same number of kids playing soccer, but the ACL tears in the knees were significant difference in numbers, like a bit like you would have to take notice. And as they started to do some research, the glyphosate, right? So glyphosate is inserting itself into one of 3 amino acids, which makes up collagen. So collagen is our connective tissue, and it's made up of 3 different amino acids. Glycine is one of those amino acids. Glyphosate will insert itself and disrupt the bond between those 3 amino acids. This is probably way more than you wanted to hear. I just realized you're probably all like, kill me now. But I just want to tell you why, because it gets into the joints, it gets into the body, the gut, the lining of the gut is made of connective tissue. All of our joints are made of connective tissue. There's lots of reasons why people have joint and gut issues, you know, Lyme disease, Epstein-Barr virus, parasites, but that one alone, just glyphosate alone, inserting itself in the connective tissue and taking the place of glycine is going to make joints unstable, right? It's going to make the lining of your gut not be good, so you're going to get leaky gut because it's the collagen is not going to have the integrity that our bodies want it to have. So that's why I think it's important to leave it out. And so the work that needs to be done is to systematically remove things. I think, Barb, it's quite possible if you did that. I mean, obviously, I don't know about the medication that you're on. I'm not a doctor even. I'm a functional health practitioner, but I'm not a doctor. So understanding those medications is out of my realm. But what I do know is when we give our body the tools for those primary systems to work, you can clear a lot. You can get your body back a lot. And then the other pieces of it are the things that we've been talking about this week, getting your soul and your spirit and your emotions and your nervous system to be doing the same work as your physical body that you're working on. And that's going to give you the best chance of having the machine that God made work the way it's supposed to work. So I don't know if that answers the question or not.
Well, I do try to stay away from gluten as much as I can, but I also feel that my weight is, you know, I mean, everybody tells me, and I do try to get gluten-free pastas, or if I eat pasta even. I'm almost afraid of food now. I am afraid of foods.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm sorry about that. And we can talk about it like privately if you want, but here's the last piece that I'll tell you is gluten. If gluten triggers an immune response, that immune response from one exposure. So, you know, one time of eating a little bit will trigger an immune response for 6 to 8 months. Oh. Mm-hmm. So, and I don't know about all different foods, but I know about gluten because it's so highly studied and, you know, I've learned a lot about it, but your immunoglobulins will be elevated for 6 to 8 months from eating gluten one time. And that's why people go, oh, I'm mostly gluten-free. Maybe once a week I have it. Or I've been gluten-free for 2 months, but I'm still not well. It takes 8 months for your immune system to stop that inflammatory response from one exposure because it's such a it's such an unwanted thing, that glyphosate and that GMO product together coming in. And if you're trying to heal your gut, every time you eat that, you're going to cause damage. Like whatever you're doing for your gut is going to unravel. So
that's very scary.
Yeah. And I don't mean to make you scared of food. It's just finding the right foods for you and saying, you know what, I'm going to, okay, I want to put weight on, but I would do it with some protein and healthy fats is how I would do it with you. More than just, okay, let me add gluten back in. That's just my opinion. And again, you know, but if you want to talk more about it, I'm happy to do that. But any other questions about like this program and the pieces of the program that I can answer for you right now? Okay. So, so I'm starting the next 10-week intensive next week. Normally the program for people to do it, so it includes, as I said, the 12 weeks of just, the 12 weeks of food plan, which is recipes, shopping list, menus, all done for you, ready to go. So it's 12 weeks of that. We get together for weekly calls that are about anywhere from 1 to 2 hours. It depends on the topic, as a group. And then we also do some one-on-one calls throughout the 10 weeks. And then you have modules that you get and you work on with things like healing codes and heart math and things like that. So normally the program is a 5K program. And for people who are on the challenge, which is right here, us, I'm offering it for 3K instead of 5. So it's almost half price. And there's a couple ways that you could do that. So you could split it up into 2 payments of $1,500 now, $1,500 in 5 weeks. You could say, listen, I could put it on a card or 2 cards and pay it in full, and then you would get another discount because I don't have to worry about payments. Or if you wanted to talk to me privately, like, look, I really want to do it and that doesn't work for me, we could do it, in some other payment plan, but I don't need to keep everybody's time on to go through every possibility. Those are the 2 ways that I think make sense. You've got it at a discount for being on the challenge. You've got it as either two payments or a slightly reduced for paying it in full. And if you're interested in doing it and you want to talk about some other plans, just let me know when we're done and then we'll figure it out. Because last year, like with pandemic, I think I told you this, Kathy, I had like 2 women last year that were both really committed to wanting to do some work together and were not working because of COVID. So financially it was an issue, and we figured out, like, one did 10 months, one did almost a full year of these are the payments that work for them. So, that's a conversation that I'm willing to have with somebody who says, I really want to do something that makes a difference for me. So that's really what I wanted to lay out for you, was all of the components. Now that you've seen some of the pieces of it, if you feel like it is a place where you want to keep working on for yourself, let me know. And next week I'm going to start, and the group call will be Wednesdays at 4:00 my time, Eastern. So again, if just like here, I will record them. If you can't be on every one, I really think it makes a difference to be on them. It's conversations like yesterday. It's much more the ontological conversations, the physiology stuff, the spiritual stuff I can put in modules and you can do on your own and we can go over it. But the ontological conversations that really change your view and your framework, I think are much more helpful when you participate as opposed to watching a recording afterwards. So I know not everybody can do it every week, but my hope is that you are, but they'll be recorded. So any questions on any of that?
Under the 10 weeks is 1 day a week. Is that how you do it?
The group call is 1 day.
Okay.
But you'll get a module with work to do every week that you would be hopefully working on daily, like healing codes. You know what I mean? Like, I just did a one-on-one call with one of my ladies who's ending, and I said, Marcia, are you, like, how, whatever we're talking. And she's like, well, I've been doing the healing codes, a few times a week. And I'm like, so we got a little bit into where she was at and what she was looking to cause. And she recommitted to doing them every day. So there's stuff to do daily, but it's not a ton of time. But the call is a week. Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So yeah, so those are the options, and I'm going to keep the recordings up through till tomorrow, and I'm going to keep that the possibility of doing it at this discounted price also through to tomorrow, so you can let me know, like, yeah, I want to move, or I'm going to hold off, and either way is fine. I hope that you got tools from this week that will continue to keep you moving forward, in a way that works for you. So any other questions that I can answer?
Well, how much in depth are we going to be going into things like the healing code and heart math? Is like one whole week devoted to each one of those, or?
So every week there's new information on healing codes. We focus on, so the healing codes is set up to look at 12 different categories of life. And to be honest, like spoiler alert, we start with forgiveness or unforgiveness, because that's a huge place. When people cannot forgive, their body can't heal. So we spend the first 2 weeks on forgiveness and using healing codes focused around forgiveness. And there's information in there about each of the categories, but we move through forgiveness, patience, kindness, joy, the ability to receive love. So each week there's some new stuff on that. And then about 4 weeks in, I teach 4 different places on the body. So I taught you ladies one set of places, right? That's not the only ones. Those are called universal healing codes, and they're great to work generally, but there are other places on the body to try to move energy. So 4 weeks in, once people have like, okay, I've been doing this for 4 weeks, I get it. Okay, here's 4 new places on your body that we're going to address. So and then you can put them together. You can do one day, the other one's the other day, you can work on it. It's just really moving the body. Energy through the body, but that happens about 4 weeks in. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let me know if you want to have further conversation about it. And also the recordings will be up, as I said, through till tomorrow. Kathy, I did try to put in the charts that I did on Tuesday, and Facebook came back with, we're having a problem. Tech is like such my friend. But anyway, it was just like 15 minutes before the call. I was like, oh, I didn't put those charts up. Let me quickly go do that. And then it said, we're having difficulty. We're working on it. So I'm hoping that maybe now when we're done, I'm going to try to reload them into Facebook, and worst comes to worst, I can email them to you because I have them stored in my computer.
Okay, that's great. I was wondering, even if you got them from a book, if you could just tell us where you got them from, I could try and find them too. But if you're going to do that, that's great.
Yeah. Who do I actually remember where I got them? No,
David Hawkins.
David Hawkins is definitely the levels of consciousness. There were 3 that I did that day. One was the different organs related to anger, and that was something that had to do with Chinese medicine.
Louise Hay has stuff on that too.
Okay, Louise so maybe Hay. Something. Louise but Hay. I have it on my computer. There's no reason why I can't load it or.
Right.
And then the third one was the
circle with emotions.
So you see the main emotions that people tend to have, and then how they branch off into. So you can start to recognize, okay, my core emotion, I'm feeling whatever right now, but it really at the core is fear. So I have them. And again, I'll try this afternoon, and if worst comes to worst, I'll just email you. Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay. So look, Barb, and I'll post, hey, they're up, so that you can go, and I'll tag you in the post, so you don't have to be checking. I'll just tag you. They're loaded up in the guides for the course, and then you probably can download it or screenshot it from there. Okay.
Great.
Yep. So let me know if I can help you or answer any questions. And thank you so much for just being here all week with me.
Thank you.
We've enjoyed it. Yeah. Thank you very much, Linda, for your time.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay. I'll talk to you soon. Yep.
Right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Nice to meet you, ladies.
You too.